Newcastle Live.
Thanks for talking to Newcastle Live. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
You're heading to West Leagues Club on Wednesday, the 26th of August. That's our local venue we're going to see you at. I wanted to start out by asking you, Elvis to the Max, was that always the plan? How did you get into this, Max?
Well, when I graduated from the University of California, I was a theater arts major, and I was cast in a summer stock production that toured the United States. I played Conrad Birdie in Bye Bye Birdie.
Okay.
And and when the show, we were in California, a producer saw me in that show, and he wanted to know if I could do a show for him in Hawaii. So we went to Hawaii, and I was supposed to be there for 2 weeks, and I ended up staying like 3 years, so it was pretty cool. And that's really how I got into it,
Well, the shows that you put on, they're legendary. There's no other way to put it. I wanted to ask you, one of the things that people always talk about when they experience your show is the band. Can you tell me about the band you're bringing to Wests on the 29th of August? Sorry, the 26th of August.
My band is from Sydney, and they're guys that I've worked with for years and years and years here, and they're fantastic. I've got a 4-piece rhythm section with 3 horns and 4 singers, so it's a pretty good sized band. And everybody's like, everybody, like my guitar player is like, he's a James Burton impersonator, so.
Wicked.
He's right on the money.
And the other thing that people talk about, Max, are the costumes. Where do you source them from, and what can we expect to see at the show that you're going to bring to us?
Well, there's these guys that make the costumes in Kentucky, here in the United States, and the gentleman that works for them now, he did all of Elvis's costumes. He actually did all the embroidery on Elvis's costumes. His name is Gene Doucette. And he works for a company called B&K Enterprises, and they make the Elvis costumes. And so they're really authentic because he makes them right off of Elvis's pattern. He bought all the patterns.
Yeah, that's wicked. And I suppose the next thing I wanted to move on in the interview is to talk about Elvis himself. But, his career spans a lot of... there's moments in Elvis's career, There was the beginning, and then the movies, and then, of course, the Las Vegas thing. And I was going to ask you how you pull all that together into one show.
Well, you do it in stages. I mean, I open up the show. I like to open up the show with his greatest performances, and I think, like, his 1968 comeback special was huge. That's him coming back after he was in the Army for a while and making bad movies and all that. And, but you revisit the movies, too, because the movies were a big part of his career. So I do medleys of some of his movie hits, and I do some of the 50s, a lot of the 50s songs from back in the 50s. And then we kind of move through the years there, and then we end up with the Aloha from Hawaii concert, or what I like to call just the jumpsuit years, where he had a lot of great concerts.
And tell me, one of the things that I read, not only in your press release, but in articles that had been written about the show and about yourself, was that your particular tribute to Elvis goes beyond impersonation. And I wanted to ask you how you've achieved that.
Beyond impersonation, okay. Well, look, I approach it as an actor. I don't approach it as an impersonator. So I don't look at it as really as an impersonation as I do an acting, I'm just acting.
Yep.
I'm doing him as the character as opposed to the icon,
Yep.
What we're doing with this show, we're doing Elvis in concert, and I'm really recreating his live concerts, and I recreate his humor, his personality on stage. I don't just really concentrate on the voice and the moves and all that stuff. I think there's a lot more to it than that, and I think his personality and the type of person he was is the thing that people really, really are drawn to.
And I suppose what I want to finish on is, you know, the old saying goes, they don't write them like they used to. And I guess what I want to ask you is, what do you think it is about those songs that moved people in a way that arguably songs that, you know, contemporary songs don't move audiences these days? You know, what was it about that music?
Well, I think it was the beginning of rock and roll and the beginning of songwriting. I mean, even Paul McCartney, even he said there's only so many chords and so many progressions and so many things you can do with writing music that I think we've kind of reached almost the end of that. And so now it's really hard to be melodic. You have to change. You know, if you write a song that sounds too much like something else, you get sued for it. You know what I mean? I mean, it becomes an infringement on the rights to that song.
Yeah.
So I think music is changing because of that. Because they can't really, you know, back in those days, you could write a 2-4-5 chord progression, and it was very melodic, and it was like, you know, you could sing along and go, okay, well, I know where the song is going because it's just going here. You can't do that anymore because then you get sued. Yeah. That's crazy.
And do you think
it's really hard to write songs today? So they have to really, you know, they can only write so many bars of something else. And then they have to change, you know, they've got to go into something totally different.
And do you think it's that simplicity that really still reaches people? You know, because, you know...
Yeah, and the simplicity, but that's what I'm saying, that simplicity, you just can't write that simplicity anymore. Because every time you write something very simple, it's like, oh, that sounds like that, or that sounds like that, or that sounds like that. You know, it's really hard. That's why Motown was so popular, because all their songs were very melodic and they were very predictable songs. You know, you knew where they were going with it. And in the early 50s, you know, it was basically, you know, most songs were 3 chords. You know, and that was a whole song. You know, and then a bridge, and then you go back to the 3 chords. That's the way it was. But you can't write that anymore. You can't do that anymore because you know. You'll get copyright laws, you know, and all that stuff. So, I mean, George Harrison of the Beatles wrote "My Sweet Lord," and he thought, "Wow, I wrote this great song," you know, and it's great. And then he got sued because they said it sounded too much like "He's So Fine" by the Shirelles.
Yes, I have read that story.
Yeah. Look, so what do you do? You know, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, he could weather the storm because he was loaded. He had so much money, he didn't really care, but for struggling, you know, the songwriters, I mean, they can't afford to write something that sounds too much like something else, and then they get sued for it. You know, it's just crazy. Yeah, the music industry is just changing so much. You know.
And you would have seen that over the years. I would have guessed everything changing, not only recorded music, but how the live industry has changed.
Oh yeah, and I'll tell you what, I give a lot of songwriters today. I give them a lot of credit because they have to jump through hoops to write new songs, and you know, and they and just what you said, you know, people don't really attach themselves onto these songs because of the fact that they just can't write them like that anymore. And so what do? They kind of change. They do different stuff with the electronics, with you know, the vocal patches and so on and so forth. And it's the only way you can write new music. I mean, it's really difficult now.
Oh, very much so. And it was definitely a special time of music. The Elvis period was, yeah, something different was happening around there. Max, I really appreciate your time today. And we're looking forward to the shows. And best of luck with the trip out here. We look forward to seeing you in Australia.
Newcastle Live.